Well, pnawn da pawb. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to have you join us today as we're right in the middle of Adult Learners Week. My name is Joshua Miles. I'm the Director for Wales at the Learning and Work Institute. I think I know lots of people on the call already, but for those I don't, I'm very pleased to have you here with us today. And we're going to discuss a really important subject today. We're going to discuss reskilling for renewal, lessons from Wales and Appalachia, which is really good. So today is the second day of Adult Learners Week, and we usually focus on connecting communities and connecting different places. So learning from what's happened elsewhere in the world and how we can bring that experience to what happens in Wales. Adult Learners Week is going really well so far. So as I'm sure you're all aware, there's over 600 courses on the Adult Learners Week Wales website. And we've had some great highlights already. So Radio Wales spotlighting Inspire Award winners, a ministerial statement from the Welsh Government supporting the campaign and the activities we've been doing, lots of blogs and social media content. And we even had Alan Wyn-Jones, the former Wales captain, doing a carpentry course in Gower College as an ambassador for the campaign. So it's going really, really well so far. You'll be really pleased to know that you don't have to listen to my voice for the next hour and a half. There's people much better placed than me, and we've got a great lineup of speakers for the discussion today. But I'm about to hand you over to Rob Humphreys, who's going to chair the session and hopefully ask some interesting questions of the panel as we go as well, and guide you through the next hour and a half. I'm sure all of you know Rob already, but as a refresher, Rob's a former director of the Open University in Wales. I'm sure you know is very well aligned to the ambitions of Adult Learners Week. He's also been a NIAS director before, so very much in the similar space to Learning and Work Institute, an organisation that we take our lineage from. And he's got countless years of experience in adult education prior to that as well. So I can't think of anyone better to take this on than Rob. And of course, lastly, I forgot to mention, Rob is a member of the Mae'r board, so right at the heart of the discussion on tertiary education in Wales. So on that note then, I'll hand over to you, Rob, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say today.
Diolch yn fawr, Josh. Thank you very much. And can I start by thanking you and your colleagues at Learning and Work Institute Cymru for the splendid work you do, Adult Learners Week, and indeed throughout the year. As ever, you've got your fingers on the pulse, and as ever, you're agitating nicely to create more opportunities for learners of whatever age in Wales. Well, good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this webinar. We're going to hear from three very, very knowledgeable speakers. But I thought I'd kick off by just reminding ourselves, and I'm sure I don't need to remind people, but it's good to refresh ourselves at the start of why this topic is as important as it's ever been. The relationship between lifelong learning, adult education, community renewal in sometimes challenging and difficult circumstances. We know, of course, that there are persistent economic and social challenges in post-industrial communities in Wales, in South Wales in particular, and elsewhere. We know that in Wales specifically, there are issues to do with low qualification rates, low skills, low participation in education, and really worryingly high numbers of young people not in employment, education, or training. Out-migration from communities often leads to further economic decline and social issues. On the other side of the coin, adult education has been seen as a key component of economic regeneration and community renewal. And I'm sure there are many in this room who've worked in this area, and they will know that where it works best, there's a creative synergy between state-led or state-funded provision and community-led initiatives. But it's not always well-funded, is it? And we have to be honest, it's often been marginal, at least for policymakers, whatever government ministers may say. We're also living through a time of renewed change the impact of artificial intelligence, for example. And the deindustrialization of the 1980s and early 1990s is itself now a historic event. So anyone with a child with memory of the 1980s and 1990s would now be in middle age or even late middle age. That's something we need to think hard about, it seems to me. I'd be interested to see what people got to say about that in discussion. Now, the body of which I'm a board member, Mae'r, which is responsible for regulation and funding of all post-16 education in Wales, has statutory duties to promote lifelong learning, to promote civic engagement, to promote collaboration between education providers and trade unions and others. Ticks a lot of boxes on paper, ladies and gentlemen. How these things will be secured, if they are to be secured, is still an open question in a time of very constrained funding. We also need to think perhaps about new forms of engagement and provision. We can also learn from organisations and initiatives internationally. You'll hear some of that today. And finally, it's worth reflecting on the fact, or at least beginning to think about the fact, that something that perhaps adult educators have long relied upon, developing social cohesion in order to make progress in economic, social and cultural terms, it's a foundation stone of initiatives. It now appears as if cohesion may be turning into a more excluding form within communities, and that too is something we need to confront, it seems to me. Now, those are just a few pointers about the new context and external context in which we have to operate, in which policy is made and implemented, and hopefully we can have a really interesting discussion which will touch on some of those and no doubt many more. Now, I'm now going to introduce our three speakers in turn. Before I ask them to speak, it's better to get the introductions out now, I think, then we go into free-flowing discussion. We'll first be hearing from Mae'r Francis. Mae'r is originally from Barry. She holds a degree in ceramics and three-dimensional design from Cardiff Art College and subsequently taught art in schools. As a mature student, Mae'r gained a master's degree in women's studies, for which she submitted a thesis on women and the aftermath of the miners' strike 84-85, a South Wales analysis. Mae'r has a long track record in community activity and leadership in the Deallusrwydd Valley, South Wales and beyond, being a founder of Dove Workshop, where she's currently president and vice chair. After Mae'r has contributed, we'll hear from Rachel Turnan. Rachel Turnan is an educator, scholar and community member in Southeast Ohio, USA. She works as an associate professor of sociology at Ohio University and as an affiliate faculty member of the Appalachian Studies Program and Women's, Gender and Sexuality Studies Program. She specializes in the sociology of Appalachia and the rural US. Through her research, she focuses on intersecting identities, inequalities, and people's relationship to place. She's worked with students, community leaders, and fellow researchers to better understand community building in Appalachia. Then finally, after Mae'r and Rachel have spoken, Lindsay Imms will be joining us as a member of the panel. She won't not able to join the webinar until 3 p.m. Lindsay Imms is a National Officer for Trade Union Congress Cymru and former chair of the Joint Negotiating Committee for the TUC from 2019 to 2022. Having worked within learning and skills for 20 years at TUC Cymru, Lindsay has now added health and safety, AI and equalities to her portfolio with a national officer post. But she says lifelong learning will always be her passion. So great set of speakers, and let's get straight into it. Looking forward to what you've got to tell us, Mae'r. Over to you.
Hi, Mae'r, I think you're on mute.
Great.
There.
Yeah, you're on now.
Oh, right.
Off you go.
Sorry
stuff.
about that.
We've all done it.
I've never done Microsoft Teams before, so anyway, here I go. So I'm speaking to you today from a small former mining village, Banwen, situated at the top of the Dillais Valley, north of Neath. The valley sits between the Swansea Valley to the west and the Neath Valley to the east. One of the 5 valleys in the now reconstructed administration called Neath Talbot County Borough Council, and we are still seeing levels of poverty and social deprivation. Historically, most villages in the Dillais Valley had one or more than one pit. Local factories existed in the Swansea Valley, mainly employing women. Now there are no pits and no factories. So Dove workshops based in the Banwen Community Centre, formerly the open cast executive offices of the National Coal Board, and I'm sitting in the Banwen branch of the South Wales Miners Library. Dove is the acronym for the Dillais Opportunities for Voluntary Enterprise, and that grew out of an intense struggle during the Great Miners' Strike in 1984-85, when Thatcher's government's policy determined to close down mines throughout the country. The consequences were that our communities had to face high levels of unemployment with little prospect of reskilling. At the beginning of the strike, the Neath and District Miners Support Group was established by miners, their wives, families and supporters. It was a diverse political role for women within the support group. One such role was at first to support male employment. However, 6 months into the strike, the women learned skills that would enable them to take on political roles, speaking across the UK on platforms with male trade unionists, miners leaders and experienced orators. Women became influencers and they were ready to campaign for their future by setting up a cooperative to help regenerate their community through learning new skills. So reskilling for renewal, if you like. And in 1985, an urban aid grant from the Welsh office gave us a 3-year period to establish a community-led initiative. This was a period of emancipation for women to engage in a community-based learning provision in such a deprived area where access to education courses outside the area was difficult. Lack of transport, infrequent bus service, challenging family care commitments, all these were barriers to learning. And women in the valley at this time had few skills. They were usually unemployed, but some did have part-time jobs in local factories. Coming out of the domestic sphere into the public arena gave them the chance to support this new initiative. It could be seen as an abrupt and crucial change that could define the meaning of community. And to quote Raymond Williams, who explored the meaning of community as being a sense of neighbour, whereby there existed a level of social obligation among people with a common identity. This has 2 meanings in a wider sense, that it could mean a people or a nation. The other was a more common observation in that it was a place where miners, and I quote here, have lived and want to go on living, where generations not only of economic but social efforts and human care have been invested and which new generations will inherit. Without that kind of strong whole attachment, there could be no meaningful community. He goes on to say the industrialisation of South Wales has become an example of the kind of community that has been hammered out of a very fierce conflict. And it was this intense sense of community that revealed itself as a collective community. So Williams's observations was that the miners' strike not only represented the last kick of an old order, but to be properly understood. It was the first steps to a new order. And isn't this exactly what we are discussing today? The new order of today's challenges of net zero, AI and automation. Immense challenges indeed, that on the surface might appear to be difficult. But what are the notions of AI, net zero and their connection to the community? Maybe in the past, our decisions were made within the confines of a defined, unique working class community that reached outwards to share ideas, good practice, and more importantly, to exchange and disseminate ideas and discuss our commonalities, for example, with European partners. Then we discussed and questioned new directions for women, and we dreamed our dreams to become reality. I'll touch on that a little bit later. The political struggles became the personal struggles, culminating in the establishing a centre of lifelong learning at community level and breaking down barriers to learning. What we were instinctively doing was the setting up of a family learning centre with babies and young children in the creche alongside adults of all ages attending courses. Mum leaving a course with a folder and books under her arm, her young child carrying a picture that was painted in the creche. And these are the strengths, I believe, of a community-led initiative. So within the concept of a learning community comes the necessity to create and sustain partnerships, and by recognising the social and historical changes affecting women. The experience of the strike and the way to sustain the minor support group showed the way to work collectively with others and to sustain the development of an adult learning centre. Such negotiating skills were required to set up appropriate learning programmes with other education and training providers. These experiences was the catalyst for Dove Workshop. The local Fur Education College in Neath provided adult learning classes. WA, Workers' Education Association, now known as Adult Learners Wales, worked in local isolated communities. Importantly, DACE, the Department of Adult and Continuing Education at Swansea University, formerly known as the Extramural Department, negotiated use of rooms here in Banwen to provide adult classes and become the main partners in the collaboration. Further developments for Dove were the establishing of a networking partnership, including City and Guilds, the Open University, the Institute of Supervisory Management, Neath Talbot Business Connect, Community Enterprise Wales, Chwarae Teg, and the Wales Cooperative Centre. Throughout this time of building partnerships, a local training course consortium was established called DATEC. It was a District for Adult Training and Continuing Education Consortium, bringing together formal education providers with the voluntary sector, alongside other informal partnerships, including our local doctor's surgery, who with Dr. Mary Hoptroff ran our women's health courses. In the past, the challenges were achievable. By breaking down the barriers to develop programmes of lifelong learning, we provided free part-time flexible courses with a modular structure of accumulation of credits through the Open College, registered free childcare provision and free transport support for those in the isolated villages. All this aided the development of access, all this development was led to the access courses to higher education and the establishment of the part-time degree programme, Community Universities of the Valleys. Our catchment area was now covering a wider geographical area from Carmarthen, Swansea, Brecon and Aberdare, with the support of the Open University learners who could take part in distance learning, allowing adults who were in employment, they could balance employment with learning. The role of adult education in post-industrial community has posed serious challenges. Until the referendum to leave the European Union, courses were supported by the European Structural Funds. In 1991, Dove became a member organisation of the Women's European Training Network, ERIS, whose mission statement aimed to increase the general levels of skill and knowledge, community cooperation and integration, and at improving the status of women as a group which suffers systemic discrimination and unequal treatment in the labour market. As a member of ERIS, we set up a project, Women in the Workforce, Alternative Choices for Women in Coal Mining Areas, a transnational link with partners in Germany, Belgium and Italy. Our project was recognised as an example of best practice due to our sharing of a holistic approach to training, with particular reference to the embedding of guidance and counselling within all accredited training courses. At the same time, DACE's Erasmus programme brought together their adult education programmes with the University of Bremen in Germany and the University of Po in France. Not surprisingly, these partnerships were established at a critical time of economic and social transitions. So as community education providers, we have to respond to new technology. At Dove, our first priority 40 years ago was to provide information technology courses supporting group learning and equipping individual learners with the skills required in the workplace. At that time, ICT, information communication technology courses could be provided with the support of the European Social Fund. And the European Commission plan was to implement a strategic framework that supported measures to combat and prevent unemployment, develop human resources, and promote social integration and equality in the labour market. The environment here in Dove Workshop provides a friendly, supportive environment, and as an accessible community education centre, we encourage face-to-face learning, individual support, and readily available guidance and counselling, reassuring learners that they have chosen the correct course for them. Could automation be seen then as a challenge to the first scary steps for learners to reskill? Could it also impact negatively on the local autonomy where local knowledge is so important? Shouldn't technology then that's blended learning where the meeting of minds has to be important and where digital literacy works alongside AI? The challenges of increasing economic growth and productivity and creating opportunities for women and men from all backgrounds, this argument is not dissimilar to the aims of the Dove Workshop 40 years ago, albeit then we were focused on women seeking employment. During that time, we responded well to the demographic changes in the area and still do. Currently, we provide support to families who are struggling with poverty and disability challenges. The focus for the future now seems to be on young people, and rightly so, with regard to their access to apprenticeship schemes. But a big challenge for a small voluntary sector, community-based organisation such as Dove will be to respond to the demographic changes affecting the older population. I am hoping that the net zero challenge would also look at bringing green skills into the health and social care system alongside the greening of existing roles. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the rich history of the Dove Workshop and at the end setting out some challenges that confront your organisation and us all, it seems to me. We'll now go straight to Rachel. Rachel, I think you've got some slides to show something. I don't know are you sharing the screen or are we doing it from over here?
I think I can try. I'll try my best. I have to admit that we use Teams all the time, so I should be very good at this, and apologize if I if I mess it up here.
No worries.
But give me a second and we'll see if this works. Can you see that?
It's just booting up, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. Lovely.
Okay,
Thank
wonderful. So my name is Rachel Turman, and I am here in the United States of America in Ohio, Southeast Ohio to be exact. And this is a part of Ohio that is a part of the larger Appalachian region, which I'll talk about here in a moment. And just want to say that I'm really feel very honored to be part of this panel today and to be speaking after Mae'r. The Dove Workshop and the work that Mae'r and the leaders there have done have been very inspirational to me personally, and also I've just been always very impressed hearing about the work that they do. So this is a picture. I just have a few photos to share and a map, because I know here in the United States there's lots of people who don't know what the Appalachian region is, or they think they know what it is, but they don't have the right kind of idea in mind. So I thought I'd share a map and some photos today to give you all some sense of what I'm talking about. This first photo that I shared here is a picture of right outside of town where I live in Southeast Ohio. I live in a small town called Athens. It's a small college town. And this is a picture of the Eclipse Company store, which was a company store for a small coal mining village that got set up by a local coal mine many years ago, and is now a restaurant and bar where they have like a bunch of outside seating for bands to come play and people to meet. And it's right against a rail trail where people bike and walk, and lots of outdoor recreation opportunities there too. So I think just kind of a little bit symbolic of the transition in economy here. And we've had a very different history in a lot of ways, but still a big industrial decline in the central Appalachian region in terms of coal. Let's see. So how do I go to my next slide? Here we are. So this is that map that I was talking about that shows the Appalachian region. And this is the kind of eastern part of the United States. And I tried to put a few cities in there. So those are in red, and I don't know how big they are on your screen. But New York City is there on the coast, and then Chicago is over under one of the Great Lakes, and then Toronto is up above in Canada there. So this whole region in the colored portions, the green, purple, yellow, red, and blue, are all part of the Appalachian region. And these are the borders that are defined by the US government. And the borders of Appalachia have changed over time, but in the 1960s, the US government created an entity called the Appalachian Regional Commission, and its purpose was to confront some of the issues of persistent and deep poverty in the region. And this was a time in the United States where there was a great post-World War II prosperity across the nation, but there were pockets of populations and places where poverty was really persistent, and Appalachia was one of those places. And so our government set up this commission to identify and deal with these problems and funnel some money to it. And so there was some expanding of the borders there because the people, the representatives, political representatives of those places said, hey, we want to be in the Appalachian region too if we're going to get access to some of that federal money. And so it became kind of broader than what most people think of when they think of the region. And so in the United States, when people think of Appalachia, they mostly think of the kind of core region, which is mostly around this purple, yellow, and red area. The state, so it covers parts of 13 states and all of West Virginia, which is the state I'm originally from. So that purple kind of area covers most of West Virginia. That's where I grew up. And that's just south of Pennsylvania, which is the Pennsylvania portion is in the green, and then New York and parts of New York and parts of Ohio are in green as well. And then down below, there's Kentucky, which is in a lot of that yellow portion, Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee in the red, and then down below that, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. So again, most people don't think of places like Mississippi and New York in the United States as part of the region. But again, this is all technically part of the region. Like I said, I grew up in West Virginia, and then I graduated from West Virginia University. There, I went on to do my master's degree at Appalachian State University, which is in the red portion down there in North Carolina. And that's when I first became aware of the Dove Workshop, and I participated in a study abroad program with my master's degree that I'll talk about here in a moment, where I got to visit Wales and work with the Dove during my time there. And then I came back and finished my degree at Appalachian State. I went on to do my PhD at Penn State University, which is up in the green portion there. And then after that, I found employment here at Ohio State, sorry, not Ohio State. Oh gosh, I hope none of my colleagues hear me say that. Ohio University. We are different than Ohio State University. So back down in the purple area of the region. So I have spent most of my life, save for about 9 months that I spent out in California on a kind of lark after college one time. But yeah, have spent most of my life here in the Appalachian region, and mostly in this kind of central part of the region as well. So like I said, and these pictures are a little bit fuzzy because I had to find them on my Facebook. I don't have them anywhere else anymore. But in 2007, which was 18 years ago, it was very hard for me to believe. That's when I was studying for my master's degree at Appalachian State. And they had a program there where they took students to Wales for about a month. We stayed in Ystrad and in a scout hut, very fond memories of staying in the scout hut during that time. And our group, some of us, we worked at several different organizations around the area, and I was very lucky to get to, and I think I requested to work with Dove while I was there. So I spent many days in the offices at Dove and learning about what the organization did, about how they were involved in their community, about the history of the organization, and doing some socializing too, and getting to know the people, which of course I have very, very fond memories of. This program that I participated in has been part of a much longer, decades-long really, exchange between people in Appalachia and the Welsh coalfields. And so I think there's been many scholars, community activists, miners and former miners that have taken part in various iterations of this kind of collaboration and exchange. And one of the faculty who's now at Appalachian State, Tom Hansel, eventually made a documentary called After Coal, and also he published a book by the same name. I think it was the same name. Yes, it was. Kind of giving an overview of this kind of comparison and the connections between these two regions. And so if you haven't seen those, maybe you are familiar with those, but I highly recommend them. They really document a lot of that exchange, historical exchange, and then also some of the ongoing similarities and differences between the two regions. So I put up these photos, and I will say some of my memory of 18 years ago is a little bit fuzzy, and I've been saying for the past year, like, boy, I wish I could go back 18 years and tell myself, someday you're going to be a professor, and you're going to be bringing your own students over here, and so take better notes while you're there so I could remember every last detail. But I will say that one of the main takeaways that I can still remember very clearly from my time there 18 years ago was how integrated Dove was into the community and how focused on community their organization was. And when I came back from Wales, like I said, I was finishing up my master's degree, and then I went on to do my PhD, and now here I am in Southeast Ohio working at Ohio University. And along the way, I have worked with a number of community organizations that I'll talk a little bit about, because I think that one of the things they all have in common, and I include Dove in this connection as well, is this connection to place and community. So when I was completing my master's degree, my master's thesis project was completed in collaboration with an organization called Hyrox. And this is a screenshot of their webpage here, the one with all the colorful pattern there. And their tagline is Educate, Empower, and Inspire. And they are an organization in rural West Virginia. And they were started by a couple of teachers who were noticing that early teenage girls were really losing their way in school and in life, and their confidence was plummeting, and they were struggling in a lot of different ways. And so they wanted to create an organization where girls could come to be empowered to build their confidence and also to build their academic skills and to complete high school and eventually go to college. And so they were very much focused on youth, building youth capacity in a way that was very connected to their communities and connected to place. And ultimately they have developed a lot over the years, and like this was 18 years ago when I was working with them. I want to say they were originally probably in the late 90s was when they were founded. But they have gone on to develop a lot of like early workforce development for young people, and creating paths for young people in the region to gain skills and also stay in their communities. They also encourage students to leave and go to other places as well, but they are very focused on place and building up their communities and the connection between young people and place in their part of rural West Virginia. And I should say to give a little bit more context, and I forget that this might not be obvious sometimes, but The Appalachian Regional Commission, right, was set up because there was this persistent poverty, and that was set up in the 1960s, and they've been, you know, confronting it ever since. And there has been a lot of progress made, but there still remains a lot of persistent poverty. And with the ongoing decline of industry, with natural resource extraction, and also manufacturing, and a lot of the base economic engines of communities throughout the region, there are still a lot of challenges, which I think will probably sound very similar to what's happening in Wales and elsewhere. After I graduated with my master's degree, I went on to Penn State University, and I got to work with an organization there called the Pennsylvania Women's Agricultural Network. We called it PA-WAGN for short. And this was an organization that was very much focused on peer-to-peer learning among farmers, women farmers specifically. But in the United States, we have a educational kind of system through the federal government called Extension, and it's set up through our state universities across the country. And this is where the knowledge and expertise of those institutions of higher education had a mission to spread that knowledge and expertise to farmers. And this is a very long history going back to the 1800s, but it has been very male dominated over the years, and farming has been a very male dominated industry over the years. And so the PA-WAGN's kind of goal and mission was to create educational spaces for women. And they found that this peer-to-peer learning style was very important in that context. So again, an organization that's very much focused on who the people are that they're serving in their community and in their place, the unique needs of those people. And then finally, most recently, and I guess what I've been, the organization that I've worked closest with through my career here at Ohio University has been an organization called Little Cities of Black Diamonds. And I'll talk more about them here in a second. But again, all of these organizations are they're small, they're not big, they're not multi-state, they're not, you know, they're really focused on their specific place and their corner of the world. And I think therefore have a lot of value to those places. So yeah, I'll say a couple more words about Little Cities, which is this organization here in Southeast Ohio. We have a kind of micro region of former coal mining towns that boomed during the late 1800s and early 1900s. And then here in Southeast Ohio, although the coal industry across Appalachia has been much slower to decline, and we have many open coal mines still, and coal mining is still a prosperous industry in some ways, although the labor force the demand for labor has decreased a lot over the years. And we have, you know, depending on our political situation in the United States, there's more or less demand and support for coal, and I won't get into all that right now. But here in Southeast Ohio, the industry has really been in decline for over 100 years. And the coal mines here, there was never kind of a bounce back during some of the eras where there was more demand for coal in other parts of the region. But the history and the heritage around coal mining has been something that's still very important to people in the area. And I thought that I'm really interested in this discussion maybe with you all today about how, you know, like, for example, I was born in 1981. So in 1984, I'm one of those people who's middle aged now who remembers the kind of industrial declines of the 80s and 90s. But still, and people younger than me, my students who I teach now, you know, don't remember any of that. They were born after that. But this community economic identity connected to coal, I think, is still very prominent for people. And so the Little Cities of Black Diamonds is focused on sharing that history, preserving that history, and they have an annual day where they share, they bring all the Little Cities folks together and share stories and talk about, just share the historical information about the area as a way of community building. They're an organization that goes back to the early 90s, and they are also really focused on potential tourism development in the area, and they have plans for this eco-heritage corridor. Going back to my first slide with the Eclipse Company store, we are pretty close to a major metropolitan area, Columbus, Ohio, and a lot of people come down to our area for the weekend to watch the fall leaves or go for a bike ride or go for a hike and that kind of thing. And Little Cities is really focused on developing opportunities for people to learn about the history while they're down here, and also opportunities for people to share that history and develop their skills around presenting that information and leading tours and that kind of thing. Okay, I can talk about this stuff forever, so I don't want to talk for too long today. But another couple things I'll mention are so in my capacity as a professor here at Ohio University, I work with Little Cities and other community organizations, and I'm very passionate about getting students involved in the community, because I think that, thinking about lifelong learning and the opportunities for learning beyond the classroom walls of our university, the community is a place where there's a huge amount of knowledge and expertise available, and students are also can be very valuable and helpful to local community organizations that have limited capacity. So I have always worked with students in partnership with community organizations. And one of the ways that I've been supported by that is through what used to be called the Appalachian Teaching Project. It's now called the Appalachian Collegiate Research Initiative, which is more of a mouthful, but I think they wanted it to sound more, I don't know, prestigious or something. But this is funded by the Appalachian Regional Commission, that government entity that I was talking about. And so they fund students who are doing community engaged work in local places throughout the region to come to DC, Washington, DC, and present their work to their fellow students from peer institutions across the region, and also to government officials. And so I think this is another example of ways in which we can share information through community, and also a maybe somewhat unique example of our federal government supporting that kind of work. And then finally, I've been very lucky this past year to be able to come back to Wales and bring my own students to visit many communities across southern Wales. And this is a picture of me at Dove, maybe close to where you're sitting right now, Mae'r. And my co-director, Tiffany Arnold, who's standing to my right here, with our students this past spring. And it was just really lovely to return to this space that had been so inspiring to me, and to remember and confirm the way that Dove is working in a very integrated way with their community, and continuing to change and adapt as different challenges come across the way. That's very true for us too. There always seems to be something new that we have to deal with, and a change in political administrations and changes in funding and all that kind of thing. And I think that again, to me, reinforces the value of these small local organizations that are really on the front lines with people and communities, and they know what is going on with people and communities. And so that's something that I try to teach my students, and also try to develop in my area, is thinking about how we can all share information and learn from each other in some way, in some kind of formal ways in the classroom maybe, and also in informal ways of sharing stories, sharing experiences. And so I'm very excited I think there's lots more to learn here, lots more to think about. So I'm excited to reconnect with Dove, and looking forward to continued discussion today.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much, Rachel. Lots of parallels, and in terms of the social and economic context, but also the challenges, the historic challenges, and the challenges that are in the here and now and likely coming up. So lots of food for thought for discussion. Can I now introduce Lindsay Imms from Wales TUC? Lindsay, you're with us, I think, aren't you? I wonder if you could, before we go into questions or points from everyone who's on the webinar today, and please do put your questions in the chat. Lindsay, if you could tell us a little about the Wales Union Learning Fund. We know from Rachel and Mae'r's contributions that institutions are very important, including locally based institutions. So Dyfrdwy, for example, is an institution which grew out of the miners' strike and community initiatives themselves. So things don't happen unless there are mechanisms and institutions. Of course, trade unions are extremely important institutions, not just in the workplace, but in wider civil society. So I wonder if you can tell us a little about how the Wales Union Learning Fund is able to contribute in this space.
Love to. Thank you.
Welcome, by the way.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. And can I start by saying how lovely it is to be part of an all-female panel? That was a lovely treat. So thank you to the organisers for that. And also to say that I had let the organisers know that I was going to be late today, and I decided to drop out of my overlapping meeting a bit early so that I could hear both of my fellow contributors. And I'm so glad I did. It was really, really interesting. So thank you both. If I may just start by saying that I work for TUC Cymru, the Welsh arm of the Trades Union Congress. We are the umbrella, I can't say the word umbrella without the movement. We are the umbrella organisation for trades unions in Wales. So unions affiliate to us. We don't have direct members, but we have affiliates. And we are also in charge of running, alongside Welsh Government, the Wales Union Learning Fund, which we call WOLF for short. Not wolf with an O, although if you do want to see a wolf with an O, keep an eye on our social media over the next few days, because we have a lovely wolf video coming out, which you might find quite interesting. So keep an eye on that. But WOLF, WULF, Welsh Union Learning Fund, was set up by Welsh Government in 1999. So it's been running over 25 years now consistently. And it's a pot of money provided by Welsh Government to trade unions in order that people in work can access learning and skills opportunities. I must make it very clear that it's not just for union members. You do not have to be a union member to access WOLF, but the money is given to the unions rather than employers, because unions see that, Welsh Government sees that as a way of being able to access the workers that perhaps they otherwise wouldn't, i.e. those with the lower skills, those with most to gain, those who could contribute more if they had skills opportunities given to them. And we know that some management teams, not all, would provide learning and training opportunities for the ones at the top or in the middle, the ones they interacted with the most, as opposed to those on the shop floor. So that's what it's for. At the moment, we are in year 2 of a 3-year WOLF round. So the unions have been guaranteed the funding for up until 2028. And it's reconfirmed every year with the budget. And it's not a huge amount of money. WOLF money does not go far enough. There's no two ways about it. What it can pay for is anything to do with employability. So if you think that a course would mean you would be able to go for a promotion, go for a new job, expand your skills in some way, give you the skills to become self-employed, then technically WOLF can pay for it. Unions do sometimes need to put caps on the amount an individual can apply for, because they're trying to stretch their money as far as they can. But those are the rules. What it won't pay for is any work or job-related training that you need in order to do your job. For example, if you were to work in the food industry and you needed a certificate to prove you can safely handle food in a hygienic way, WOLF wouldn't pay for that, because that's the employer's job. Same way that they wouldn't pay for health and safety courses. WOLF won't pay for that. That's the employer. But what it will pay for is the higher level stuff. That means people can move on, move up and improve. A couple of examples for you. The FBU is the Fire Brigades Union. They have raised the retirement age for part-time firefighters to 65. And if you need to be climbing in and out of buildings and cutting cars into pieces, you need to stay fit and healthy. So one of the things the FBU WOLF project is doing is paying for those part-time firefighters to get qualified as personal trainers, so they can keep themselves fit, but also give them an opportunity to retrain once they retire, should they want to. The FBU are also doing some manual courses in trades. If for ex-firefighters who want to become plasterers or who want to become carpenters once they leave the fire brigade. Another example would be the BFAW, that's the Bakers, Food and Allied Workers Union. In, I think it's Memory Lane Cakes. If you're familiar with Cardiff, you'll know Memory Lane Cakes. They employ an awful lot of migrant workers, and the employer, as they had to, put them through that stage 1 food hygiene certificate, but would do no more. And they had other jobs within Memory Lane Cakes where you needed hygiene level certification 2. So Woolf was able to pay for that because it wasn't a requirement of the job, and it meant that some of those migrant workers were able to apply for and secure a promotion within a job that they were already in. So that's the sort of thing that Woolf does. If I could just stats bomb you briefly, because I wrote this press release yesterday it will hopefully go out this week in line with Adult Learners Week. We've just had a review of the 2022-2025 Woolf round, and we surveyed the learners who took part, of which there were thousands and thousands. And what it proves is that, firstly, Woolf is reaching those who are often left behind. Nearly 25% of Woolf learners report having a disability, and 26% of learners have caring responsibility. So these both groups are people who often can't access a traditional classroom-based course, but they can access learning at work and they can access learning online, and these opportunities are provided through Woolf. 93% of the people who responded to our survey found that the training was either very or quite useful. And when asked what they would have done if Woolf training hadn't been available, over half said they wouldn't have done any training at all. And I think that's a real stark reminder of the value of Woolf. I think by the very nature of the fact it's been funded by Welsh Government for over a quarter of a century shows what an enduring and powerful fund it is. We are proving the worth of it every year, but these sort of stats really help. 72% of learners said their training had improved their performance at work. And I love this one, 87% felt encouraged to pursue further learning. They're not doing a course thinking, that's good, I'm done. What else? What's next? What can I do to improve myself? So it's not just a one-off opportunity, it's a gateway to lifelong learning. 36% of learners said they would recommend Woolf to colleagues, but even better, 60% already had, which I love, a testament to its impact. And then co-investment. So over the 3 years of 2022-2025, which was the last round of Woolf, Welsh Government spent £4.7 million on the project, which if you think about it is a drop in the ocean, Welsh Government budget-wise. And £2.5 million was co-invested, either by learners helping to pay for their own learning, by employers allowing release for workers to go and do some learning in work time, or for union learning reps and such using their time to help promote and signpost people to learning. So that's a 53% increase on what was input as a result. If you were a shareholder and you said, I'm going to spend 4.7 million, but we're going to get 2.5 back on top, I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? And Woolf between 2022 and 2025 reached 108,180 people. So this isn't just a budget line in Welsh Government spend. This is a catalyst for transformation, transforming people's lives. And I've watched people, because I've been at the TUC for such a long time, I've watched people who started off as learners become ULRs, become Woolf project managers, and secure onwards and upwards training and promotions throughout their lives. So it's very, very special to me. It's very, very important. And long may it continue. We continue to lobby government to support it. It's implied and Labour's manifestos. I can't speak for the others. And some pushback we sometimes get from employers is, what if we train them and they leave? And my comeback to that is, what if we don't and they stay? Then what? What do we do? So, as I said, Woolf is a work-based learning project. However, there are pockets of community support available. Lots of trade unions have community branches, and I love the fact that we are reaching out into communities too, but we can't do enough. The workplace projects demand so much money and attention that we can't reach out into community learning, which means we aren't really impacting on those who are neat or who are just out of work for whatever reason. And the things Maya was saying about, you know, communities where there is terrible public transport and people want to stay where they live, I understand that completely. My husband grew up in Pontypool. He worked in the same factory his dad worked in. His mum also worked there, and so did his brother. When we met, I dragged him to what he describes as the big smoke here in Cardiff. But there are lots of his family who want to stay where they live, and why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they be able to work there? If you look at somewhere like Pontypridd, where they've built that new Transport for Wales hub, what a glistening example that is of what can be done to bring jobs into outside Cardiff, let's say. It can be done. But in the meantime, we do need to rely on that community learning, because I don't know where else the money is coming from. We know employers cut their training budgets as their sort of first thing when things get tight. But governments do the same thing. Local authorities do the same thing. And in the years I've been at TUC Cymru, I've watched the numbers of courses and therefore the people who are going on them go down and down and down and down. And there's only so much we can do. So I would do everything I could to possibly encourage government to reinvest in adult learning. I mean, who fails? Who doesn't benefit from adult learning opportunities? Who's the loser? Because I can't think of one. And so, yes, I'm a big cheerleader, and I will do everything I can to encourage other people to cheer with me. One final point, if I may. Welsh Government do have programmes for NEETs. They have the Young Person's Guarantee, which was supposed to guarantee a young person the opportunity for either further training, a job, or I think an apprenticeship. I don't think that's working as well as it could. I'm not an expert in it, but I don't think it's working as well as it could, because it's not funded as well as it could be. Nothing to do with the staff involved in running it. They also have Jobs Growth Wales, which was a programme to provide people with a 6-month placement paid at least minimum wage, which would then hopefully lead on to further jobs. That isn't the same anymore. It's now called Jobs Growth Wales Plus. Everything has a plus on the end of it with Welsh Government. Meaning that there are a few options, but there aren't as many as there were, and it's because it was too expensive. So where do we go? I don't know. I think that there is something that can be done with all of those Welsh Government schemes to support NEETs and people out of work in hiding the wiring. I think sometimes these things are too difficult to access. There's lots of phone us and we'll talk it through. But I know a lot of young people. I know people who I've worked with in recent years who don't like to pick up the phone, for example. They want to talk on WhatsApp, they want to talk on email. And as frustrating as I might find it, we need to adapt to what people want. So I think there's something to be said for that. And finally, personal learning accounts. For those of you who don't know, personal learning accounts exist. People paid under a particular threshold. I think it's about £30,000 now. And if you earn under that amount or you're at threat of redundancy, you can have a free course through the personal learning account system. And some of the courses there are fantastic and some of them are very in depth. But to try and match the course you want to do with a provider who's doing it for someone trying to come in and navigate this system is incredibly difficult. So I think there's a lot of hiding the wiring to be done and a lot of streamlining that could really help. And I'm really hoping that MEDA can help with that. So Rob, on that note, I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for putting me on the spot, and rightly so. Thank you very much. Loads of ideas and optimism, and two takeaways for me. First, your use of the term gateway. I think is a wolf course is a gateway drug actually to future learning. Probably not allowed to say that. And secondly, a really important point you made was that it's an investment from government, not a cost in learning, because the benefits way outweigh the original investment. So thank you so much. So we've got about 14 minutes, I think, for questions, discussion. And let's go straight in. I've got one from Cecilia, who, Cecilia, you say you're from just southeast of London. So great to have you with us. And you say, I'm aware of my local context of small voluntary organisations being very vulnerable to loss of resources, cost of living pressures, macroeconomics, and so on. What has helped, or what does help, keep strands of work continuing in your areas, even if some organisations close. So maybe Maya and Rachel, you could start here, because you both hinted at real challenges around keeping things going and living hand to mouth, if you like. What does help, and what are the immediate challenges around funding? So Maya, do you want to go first? You're still on mute. You need to unmute yourself. Oh, I'll go Rachel. While Maya masters the unmuting, we'll go to Rachel in Ohio. But the funding questions.
Yeah, I think in my in the context of Appalachia, and in the context of this over 50-year kind of federal funding that has come from the Appalachian Regional Commission, one thing that has been documented is there has been a very uneven investment in communities across the region, and depending on which era and political administration is in the White House, or who's making decisions at the federal level, sometimes they're very focused on what they've called growth centers, and so these are more urban places. They're some of the most rural and remote places really have been left behind in that trajectory. And so I think that's where we see a lot of the ongoing persistent poverty and challenges. The communities with little cities of Black diamonds, just to give you another example from that organization, they talk about, like, they have over 70 or so, maybe even up to 100 small little former coal towns that they've identified. Many of them are no longer even in existence. So you might find it's like a forested place that has some remnants of buildings now, but so some of those communities are completely gone. Others that were bigger and had more infrastructure to begin with are still around, but many of them are really struggling. And so I will say I don't think that I have a really positive message to say about that, but there has been a lot of uneven growth in our region, and part of that has to do with where federal dollars and state dollars are funded. But even so, I'll say that, even in those places that are really small and struggling, again, I think that's where the power of local community organizations is really felt and really valuable.
Thanks, Rachel. Maya, the Dove Workshop sometimes seems like a miracle that you keep going at all. What is the? Have you got a magic answer?
No, not really. We're struggling to get funding. We're applying now for funding through the UK government for project work, and there's no guarantee that we'll get it. And we're hoping we're going to keep our core funding for next year, but they're looking at cutting funds in the voluntary sector. But we work very closely with the local authority, so we see ourselves as effective partners. And Leanne is brilliant at just accessing whatever funding she can get. Sometimes it's lottery money, sometimes it might be specific initiatives that apply to courses, but it is a battle. It's very difficult.
You mentioned that just there. Dove is seen as a key partner, and in your talk, you spoke quite a lot about partnerships with further education colleges, universities. Are those still as strong as you'd like them to be?
No, I think they have changed, because as we don't have the Department of it doesn't exist. The Department of as you know, Continuing Education, Swansea University, that doesn't exist anymore. So that was an enormous initiative and excitement for us to provide the part-time degree programme, because we could see a progression of learning then from the sort of soft courses that people would come on, and they would end up with the choice of doing a part-time degree. The colleges now tend to sort of expect people to go to the colleges to look for to attend courses. I mean, our big issue is that there should be. We know we have a family learning centre where the barriers of coming out to courses while you're juggling family life, we can help in that way. I'm not sure whether the big institutions do that anymore. So it's not just funding, it's the sort of focus on how, and getting numbers as well. You know, if we've chosen a particular course that people want to attend, we've got to get the numbers in. And it's quite varied at the moment. It's different because we do courses on literature, on women's writing, on art. So they're very much the soft courses. There's some history courses now. There's one looking at the Bronte sisters, which will be repeated. There's good demand on Welsh history. And so we're getting people in, but we need to get more funding, obviously, to make sure that we can improve and expand on provision.
Thank you. Better move on to another question. Lindsay, just to forewarn you, I'll give you first go at this one, okay? This is from Josh, actually. Josh says, with a backdrop of 100 years of economic decline, how do we stop people from thinking that decline is inevitable and that something, and persuade them that something better is possible, particularly given the current decarbonisation AI challenges? And how can we persuade people that these things might happen quickly in order to respond to very rapid economic change?
Thanks, Josh. It's a nice, easy one. So first of all, I think we don't need to persuade them. We need to show them. And the example I gave of the building in Pontypridd is a classic example of that. Whenever we can show people change as opposed to talk about it in the abstract, that is the key. And I appreciate that that takes time, but it also is vitally important. And they don't have to be big changes. They don't have to be great, big, shiny buildings. Maya was just talking about soft skill courses. I think those are vital in getting people back into learning because they give you the confidence. Yes, I'll go and learn about my family tree. Yes, I'll go and learn about women's literature. And then when you've got the confidence to be back in a classroom setting, that's when you can start talking to people about, well, what skills do you have? What skills would you like? What jobs are around you? And start to build step by step. There is no magic wand, as we all know. But I think the small steps, the showing people, and also the language we use. Should we be talking to 20-year-olds about post-industrialization, or should we be talking about the here and the now? Should we be talking about just transition, or should we be talking about, are you going to be using AI in your next job? I think the language we use, and we work in a bubble, most of us, don't we? And we get used to those terms and we throw them around all the time, but they aren't relevant to everybody. And I think we need to be very careful. And one final moan, is it a moan? The phrase green skills does get up my back a bit, because all skills are skills, and green ones, I'm yet to understand fully what they are. Yes, I understand we need people who can fix wind turbines or fit heat pumps. I get that in the abstract, but I work in an office. What green skills do I need? What green skills do I need to teach, my stepson? What does it really mean for the vast majority of us who aren't working in the offshore wind sector or in retrofitting homes? Someone needs to explain that to me. And I think that that's borne out by the fact that I saw some stats recently about a job search for jobs that had the term green or just transition within them, and there were a handful of those very specialist roles that I just mentioned. But the rest, like 90+%, were local authorities or similar public sector organisations, hospitals and so on, trying to hire a green ambassador or a green skills advocate who could teach them what green skills are and what we need to do. So I'm not alone in not knowing, and I'd love someone to explain it to me properly.
Thank you. I think I'll go on to a couple more questions, and I'll try and bring two questions in together. One from Sean Wynne Evans and another from, I don't know who it is, but it's somebody in Northern Ireland. Can't read your username out. But Sean asks about, do the panelists have any thoughts on age and aging in relation to the kinds of communities we've been talking about? And the very interesting question from Northern Ireland, I'll read it out. Our numbers of NEETs, that's not in education, employment, training, are rising, particularly with young women. Have the panel any insights into how we reverse this, or insights into why this is happening? Oh, it's from Kathleen O'Hare. Apologies, Kathleen, you did put your name. So the question is really, I guess the questions touch on how we engage both younger people and those who are getting older, and bearing in mind, I guess, that if somebody is a NEET now, at the age of 17, say, they will be potentially the adult learners age 40 in 23 years' time, and their economic prospects may have not fared that well in the meantime. So these are pretty challenging issues we have to face. So age and aging and NEETs, particularly young women. Rachel, do I have a go?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I don't mind.
No, you're fine. I jumped my turn. You're absolutely fine, Rachel. Please go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I have all the answers here at all. I wish I had the answers to all these questions. These are great questions. In terms of age and aging, that is certainly a really prominent issue here in rural Appalachia. Many of our communities, or most of our rural communities, have a much older population compared to the rest of the United States, the average. One of the things that I've researched is the intergenerational transition in leadership in communities, and kind of, across generations, there's always a difference in perspective, and a lot of our older community leaders are wanting to retire or past retirement age and ready to pass the baton, but feel like the young people aren't taking their place or aren't interested in the same things. Going back to maybe some of Lindsay's comments about, the language that we speak and what's important to the different generations. Young people, I think, are really value their communities and want to be involved, but don't always know how to get involved, and are maybe have some anxiety about taking over leadership positions. And so I've worked with community organizations on that transition. It can be done, I think, but takes some effort and takes some real specific kind of communication and that kind of thing. And I'll just say too, I think I'll just stop there. So.
Rachel, thank you. Maya, any thoughts on this?
Well, only that I think the cohort of people, the learners that come here, are predominantly older people now, and they have issues of probably disability. It's a building with no stairs, no steps, it's one floor, and it's easily accessible. And so the young people, if they do need to access, and I'm sure they do, they will go down to the local college. They'd be the young men in particular. We've got 3 rugby clubs in the valley, and so in some form they learn skills with sport. But I would say that predominantly we don't get young people so much coming as we did. It's mostly retired and older people.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Yes, thank you. Rachel, what you said about passing the baton, I think that's something that we struggle with. People reach retirement age and they go, and they take all their skills and all their knowledge with them. I know there's sometimes a handover, and there's, but very often people do their bit, they finish, and then they're gone. So I think that's something we can build on, is about understanding, and it's not about qualifications, it's about the skills you've learned. It's also not, to use a horrible phrase, sorry, but monkey see, monkey do. It's not that either, but it's about unpicking somebody's deep knowledge in an industry, in a workplace, in an office that they've had for lots and lots of years, so that they don't take it with them. We also, within Wolf, the biggest demographic of users of Wolf are in the 50+ bracket. So that's nice. That bucks the trend, because I know that's not true across adult education. Younger workers is where I find the most difficulty, because in order to access younger workers, we need to be able to be in the businesses they are in. And often those are the least stable, most mistreated environments, such as hospitality and retail. And try as we might, it's very, very difficult to unionize within those sectors, because people don't think they're going to be there very long. They think they're going to do this little job for a bit and then they're going to get something better. And often they stay for decades. But if you've missed them when they're 17, chances are you've missed them forever in terms of union membership. And that's something that our affiliates really need to work hard to fix. And some of them are trying very hard, but it's a difficult one.
Thank you. We're running over time, but I'd like to take this final question from Andrew Phillips. if I may. It kind of takes us forward from the last set of responses. And Andrew says that NEETs are not eligible for ACL courses, adult community learning courses. Our remit is 19 plus. We can work with young people in exceptional circumstances only, I think is what Andrew means. But how do the panel see us engaging community members who do not necessarily even think about adult learning, bearing in mind that the community learning grant in Wales only allows us to use 5% of the grant for actual engagement work. So this, again, this is a question about how do we reach the people who perhaps we are furthest away from. I'm saying they're furthest away from us. We are furthest away from as providers. How do we do that?
That's a hard one again. I didn't know that about 5%, so that's very interesting. I did not know that. Thank you for the information. Something that TUC Cymru are doing is we used to call them summer patrols, and they've changed their name, and for the life of me I can't think of it. But we're taking a group of young workers into retail shops and bars and talking to the staff there with permission of the manager, which we often get, which surprises me. With permission, we talk to the young workers there and ask them what work is like for them. Are they working hours they're not getting paid for? Are they having to pay for their own uniforms? All these sorts of things that are without correct employment procedures. And amongst that, we talk to them about learning. So it's hard work physically and mentally, and it takes a lot of time, and it's by no means a solution, but it's the only thing we've come up with so far that means we're interacting with the right people, raising the awareness of the trade union movement, what it can do to support you in work, and what it can provide learning opportunity wise. So I wonder if there's an option for ACL providers to come together collectively to plan a similar sort of thing. It's literally trudging about on high streets with leaflets and clipboards, but it works.
Yeah. Briefly, Maya, Rachel, anything on this? We touched on it already in many ways. On really getting the people who are furthest away.
I'm stumped on it. I think it's a real challenge. Whether we could work closely with the local schools, that might be an issue about school leavers. And
Kate Smith makes a point now in the chat that family learning is still a real area of potential here. Partnerships with schools as places of engagement. There's some good examples, she says, across Wales, but pretty patchy. But Rachel, have you had success in really getting young people who wouldn't normally engage?
I'll say this is, this is maybe a global problem, or it's certainly, I think communication networks are so diverse, and there's not one way to reach people. I know this is something that I've talked about a lot with community organizations is how are they reaching people? And social media tends to work well for them in reaching folks, but I agree there, again, just like in terms of the uneven development in our region, the most rural and remote places and young people who are in those places, it's a challenge. And I don't have a magic answer other than the community organizations that I work with just try a whole bunch of different things and see what sticks.
And to some extent, Andrew's question and the responses are perhaps directed at Mae'r as well. So there's food for thought for me as a board member of that organisation, and perhaps at the risk of making life hard for myself, I would encourage those working in this area, broadly defined, please make sure you get together and articulate your arguments. And Learning and Work Institute Cymru is a pivotal umbrella organisation here. It seems to be an advocate for many different providers in order to make a powerful case to Mae'r, because there are other parts of the post-16 sector who have considerably more resources to deploy in making a case, as we know. So there are already eyes and ears in Mae'r, but we need to hear the case. Well, colleagues, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you in particular to Lindsay, Mae'r and Rachel for your stimulating contributions, and in particular engaging so well with the various questions and observations from those who've joined us. This is a conversation I think that needs to continue, were it ever thus. I think many of us, to be frank, are used to working on the margins of things in this area, and that's often very challenging. But paradoxically, working at the margins allows us to be innovative, fleet of foot, creative, daring, and even break some rules now and again. So let's keep working in that spirit and keep the dialogue going between us one way or another. And I know many people here will be involved in activities in Adult Learners Week, and I wish you the very best of luck with those. It's always a great week and always great events on. So thanks to everyone for organising those, and thanks for joining us today. Have a good rest of the afternoon. Bye.